Hello everybody, I hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day and you're enjoying yourself. It's a real feeling of spring out there. Everybody on top seems to be in great form. Birds are singing, the daffodils are now blooming, and it just feels nice, and it feels like a time of new beginnings. And I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the psychopaths and how they use internet support groups. We live in an age where people just jump onto an internet support group without fully checking who the person is behind it. That's why when I began making the Labyrinth of the Psychopath videos, I didn't hide my public identity for the simple reason I wanted people to know who I was so that they could trust me, and if they wanted to contact me personally they would feel okay doing that. I didn't have an agenda other than to share this information. But you'll have a situation where you'll have these internet support groups where the psychopaths will be involved in two levels. The most common level for the psychopath to be involved in is to join the internet support group in order to find vulnerable targets and easy pickings. For instance, a psychopath will join a cancer family survivor or a cancer family support group, say for people whose, say, their mother, their father, their wife, their sister, husband has cancer. And they'll usually look for people whose spouse has cancer and is in the terminal stages of cancer, and they will befriend this person. They'll be telling them stories about how, oh, I nursed my boyfriend, or I nursed my father when he had cancer, and the psychopath will develop a bond with the victim at this period as they're being highly vulnerable, and they give them support and they'll be perfect for them, and they'll help them all through. And when the spouse finally sadly passes away, the psychopath will then begin moving in as the next spouse, and they'll even do things like travel like thousands of miles across country or to other countries to go to this person's spouse, husband or wife's or boyfriend or girlfriend's funeral to support them. But what they're doing, if they've carefully targeted this person as their next target, and this is what they're like. They're so twisted. They're not like normal people. Get that out of your head. A psychopath is nothing like us. More frighteningly, we live in an age where people will join, say, a support group of some kind without checking who the person is behind the group and what their agenda is. You'll see groups on Facebook for people with all kinds of problems, and the actual info behind who runs the group will be nothing more than, say, an avatar or a picture of, a bird flying or a dove taking off or a heart, and you have no idea who runs that group. You have no idea who the moderators are, and I would actually ask people to not join these groups until the people behind those groups are publicly announcing who they are, because you could be dealing with, I'm not saying it's the case in all these groups, but you could be dealing with a group that has been set up by a psychopath for the specific purpose of targeting vulnerable people who may be going through a bad time by sending them PMs and saying things like, oh, I know what you're going through. Remember, a support group to a psychopath is like a schoolyard, a kindergarten to a paedophile, and they will set up these groups in the same way a paedophile will stand outside a schoolyard or a bag of candy. It's the same predatory psychology, and you're not dealing with somebody who's like you and thinks like you. So I'm not saying you should be aware of these support groups. I would encourage people who have all kinds of problems and need help to join these many wonderful internet support groups out there. But make sure you know who's running the group, they have a real identity, and they're not some psychopath who's using it as a pickup joint, okay? Thank you very much. I'm Thomas Sheridan, the author of the now very popular Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, a guide on how to spot, deal with, cope with, and then ultimately survive and thrive with psychopaths in your life. Remember, one in every 25 people in this world is a psychopath, and this information is being deliberately kept away from us. And I put this book out here. It's not a negative book. It deals with a negative subject, but ultimately it's a book about how to survive and make a great life for yourself and to protect yourself forever. So take care, and I'll be back in a little while. Bye.